G'day, welcome back to another video. In this video I'll be building this Tamiya Top Force 2017 straight out of the box. If you saw my last video I did the unboxing and yeah, anyway, so you might notice some sparkle in the paint, maybe, but there's more on that later. I used a bit of lame flake. Anyway, it's not really like a step-by-step build, it's just there's a few bits time-lapse and whatever, but mainly there's just some tips and stuff here and there. Yeah, anyway, enjoy. Before I start, I'll just go through the optional parts that I'm using and the electrics. So of course we're using a full set of ball bearings and a little Fly Sky receiver and a Tower Pro Metal Gear servo. For the speed controller I'm using a Tamiya TBLE 02S and I've added a fan, a TFU01 fan. That's in my last video, you might see it. Reason being I want it to run cooler with the 23 turn motor, and there's a possibility I might run it on 3S, so yeah, we'll see. And a Tamiya Super Stock RZ motor, 23 turn. Using some alloy hex adapters because the plastic ones are really no good. Also using an aluminium motor mount because the gearbox tends to warp with heat. And there's all our parts. So let's get into it. So my first tip for the build is make sure you put these washers in the diff the right way and use the right ones. The first diff I built, I had to pull it apart again because I'd used either two of these or two of them in the same diff when I shouldn't have. As you can see here, we've got a MA10 at the top and MA11 at the bottom. But my first diff, I just put the same washers in. So yeah, it's all about paying attention. And you want to be very careful about these ones here. The orientation of these disc springs. They got to go, you know, like this and like that. So yeah, just have a good look at those before you put them in. If you're going to mess up anywhere in the kit, it's probably going to be here, right at the start. Now instead of chasing the diff balls around like I started to in the beginning, you're better off to get a stick or I used an Allen key and dip the end in some grease, and then you use the grease to pick up the balls and put them where you need them. Now the rear gearbox is all built, now we can move on to the front gearbox. Now a little tip for your thread lock, so you don't get it on both sides of the shock tower and make a mess. Just poke your screw through the shock tower and then dip it in the thread lock, rather than, you know, dipping the screw in and then poking it through the shock tower, and you get it everywhere. Yeah, so I kind of do that wherever possible. So that's the front end all built. Now that the front end and the rear end are both built, we can move on to the shocks and get those mounted up. Hear that? That's right, you shouldn't hear anything. When you're building your shocks, you want to put enough oil in that there's no air, so you don't get squelchy noises. And you want the piston to stay out when you pull it out, and you want it to stay in when you push it in. Now sometimes if you put too much oil, well usually if you put too much oil in, it's going to push back out on its own, like a hydraulic ram. For me, maybe that much would be acceptable. I'd probably leave it that way. But if it's pushing halfway out or a third of the way out even, you know, take a little bit of oil out and bleed it, and off you go. Alrighty, moving on. And if you haven't seen them before, those blue pliers there are shock shaft pliers. Very handy tool, good for not pinching up your shock shafts and your turnbuckles. They're only cheap, they're like 14 bucks or something. Highly recommend them. And just another small tip regarding our shocks. I've got the front ones here. On the Tamiya shock collars, it's a little bit fatter on the back where the thread of the screw bites into it. So that's basically the back of, you know, the back of the shock collar. So on the front of the car, they'll be something like that. I'll set them down. So yeah, to make it easier, you can get to the front, you know, like that. If you were to put them around that way, or swap them over, it's much harder to get to on the car, you know, with the chassis and stuff being back here. So yeah, I just like the front ones will be sitting out like that, so they're nice and easy to get to. And on the rear ones, same thing. So you got the screws facing forward, but yeah, so they'll be on the back of the car like that, facing out, and it just makes it easier to get to. Yeah, it does show that in the instructions, but you know, sometimes it doesn't. But it's just something I've always done, and yeah, it just makes it a lot easier to get to your shock collars rather than trying to, you know, twist them around or whatever when they're on the car. Alrighty, moving on. And we're getting there now. Got the shocks on, front and rear ends all assembled. Now we can move on to the chassis. The J12 part there is very tight to get a tapping screw in, and the Tamiya box wrench doesn't fit over it because it's not deep enough. So I went and used a deep 7mm socket. Then of course I added some ball bearings to the bell cranks hopefully the steering is going to be silky smooth. Now it's starting to look like a car. Now that the chassis is almost finished, it's time to add the electrics. Now another little trick I like to do along the way is shorten some wires. As you can see, I've shortened the servo wire there, so it's all looking very neat. Don't have to tie it all up. And I'm in the process of doing the speed controller wiring. So I've done the fan wire and the ESC wire there, shortened the switch wire, and since I don't plan on running a brushless motor anytime soon at least, I've cut down the orange wire and tinned the end of it, just so it doesn't fray and all that. But I'll put a bit of shrink tube over that and, you know, shrink it on, and it'll be nicely covered up. And then I'll probably cut the motor wires, and I'll actually, instead of having the plugs there, I'll just solder these wires straight onto the motor, and yeah, it should all look a lot neater, like a servo wire.
2 hours later.
Yeah, there we go, all done. A couple of the wires are a little bit shorter than I really anticipated, but yeah, they're neat, that's all that matters. And this one over here that I terminated, the orange one, I basically got a small piece of tube and fit it over the soldered end, and then bent it over and put a bigger piece over that. And yeah, so it's all sealed in the end. And yeah, if I need to use it as brushless one day, I can take the shrink off and solder a wire on there. Got our Dean's battery plug on there, shorten the motor wires, and yeah, hopefully should be able to fit a battery under that. Didn't really measure it. Yeah, but we got rid of all these wires out of the car, so it looks a whole lot neater. Alrighty, moving on. So as you can see now, the top plate's on, and wiring's all done, and we've got our alloy hex adapters on there, so the plastic ones don't get chewed up. Alright, now time to move on to the body and fit the wheels and tyres too. And there's our completed chassis, wheels and tyres all on there. I actually glued the tyres because although they are a really tight fit, they're very hard to get on. Just in case I run 3S or whatever, I don't want the tyres coming off, you know. And now we can move on with the body. Alrighty, so the body's all trimmed and wings trimmed, and probably the worst masking job in the history of RC ever. Anyway, they have stickers that go over the window on the outside, so it's all good. So I've got to bang on the PS17. That's a metallic, green metallic. So that'll be box art, but I'm also thinking before that I might throw a little layer of lame flake on. It's a bit hard to see, but yeah, basically it's all sparkly. Haven't really decided, but by the time I get outside to paint it, I will have decided. Alrighty, so the body's all painted now. I did use the lame flake on it. So it's PS53. So what I did on the wing and on the body, did a fine coat of, actually it was a pretty heavy coat. So I did one coat of the lame flake, and then I did, you know, I let that dry. Then I did a coat of the green PS17, the box art one. So I let that dry, and then I did, I think, 2 more coats of green after that. Then I did 1 coat of PS12 silver, just because the green's kind of see-through, you need to back it with something. So I backed it with the silver, and then because I wanted the body green on the inside and not silver, I did 1 more coat of green over the top of that, and that was it. And there it is. Mr. Sparkle would be proud. Anyway, bit of a shame to cover it up with stickers now. I think I'll take it out in the sunlight, see how it pops. It's more of a rainbow effect when you turn it. The metallic kind of flips around, you know, like a rainbow. Anyway, I'll take it outside and show you. The camera doesn't really pick it up. Yeah, it's very rainbow looking in real life, but yeah, the camera just doesn't do it justice. But you get the idea. It's not plain green. And that's it. The build's finished. Looking pretty good, I think. Alrighty, so that's it for this video. Hope you got something out of it and hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, probably in the next couple of days I'll get this out and give it a run. I'm thinking maybe the footy oval or something. I don't want to take it to the usual location and scratch it all up. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take it easy.